I never believed in love at first sight. Not at 45, not after two failed relationships, and certainly not while sitting in a hospital waiting room at 2 a.m. with a sprained ankle. But then she walked in, not as a patient, but as a volunteer checking on late night arrivals. And everything I thought I knew about myself, about love, about timing, shattered like glass. Her name was Elena, she was a professional dancer, and somehow, in that fluorescent-lit room that smelled of antiseptic and burnt coffee, she looked at me like I was the only person in the world worth seeing. This is the story of how a woman who'd given up on romance found herself completely undone by a woman who moved through life like poetry. The emergency room at 2 a.m. is a strange kind of purgatory. I sat there with my left ankle elevated, throbbing beneath an ice pack that had long since turned lukewarm, watching the automatic doors whoosh open and closed like the breathing of some mechanical beast. My phone was dead. My dignity was dead. My hiking boots, the expensive ones I'd bought to prove I was still adventurous at 45, were cut open by the paramedics who'd found me on that goddamn trail. Midnight hiking, my ex-girlfriend Rebecca would have said, shaking her head. Classic Sarah self-sabotage. Maybe she was right. Maybe trying to hike alone in the dark because I couldn't sleep was exactly the kind of reckless thing a woman having a midlife crisis would do. But I preferred to think of it as reclaiming my independence. 6 months since Rebecca moved out, 3 months since I'd stopped crying about it, and 2 hours since I'd stepped in a hole I didn't see and heard my ankle make a sound ankles should never make. The waiting room was nearly empty. An elderly man snored softly in the corner, his son beside him scrolling through his phone. A young mother rocked a feverish toddler, and then the volunteer coordinator's door opened, and she walked out. She moved differently than other people. Even in that terrible fluorescent lighting, even wearing the standard issue burgundy volunteer vest over a simple black turtleneck and jeans, she seemed to glide rather than walk. Her dark hair was pulled back in a bun so tight it looked painful but somehow elegant. She carried a clipboard and wore the kind of posture that made you sit up straighter just looking at her. She went to the elderly man first, speaking in soft Spanish that made him smile. Then to the young mother, crouching down to the toddler's level with the kind of grace that suggested years of practice getting low to the ground. And then she turned to me. Our eyes met. I don't believe in moments. I believe in decisions, in accumulated choices, in the slow build of compatibility. I believe in pragmatism and realistic expectations and protecting yourself from the kind of foolish hope that leads to heartbreak. But when her eyes, dark brown, almost black in that lighting, locked onto mine, something in my chest cracked open like spring ice on a river. "You're Sarah Mitchell," she said, checking her clipboard. Her voice had the slightest accent I couldn't quite place. "Sprained ankle, possible fracture. You've been waiting almost 3 hours?" "I have excellent patience," I lied. My ankle was screaming, and I'd been mentally composing increasingly aggressive Yelp reviews for the past 90 minutes. The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. "No, you don't. You've checked the admitting desk 4 times, and you've been glaring at that clock like it personally offended you." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "You've been watching me?" "I watch everyone. It's my job." She sat down in the plastic chair beside me, crossing her legs in a way that suggested decades of flexibility training. "I'm Elena Vasquez. I volunteer here 3 nights a week. The wait times are terrible tonight because there's a multi-car accident coming in. You're going to be here at least another 2 hours." "That's the best news I've heard all day," I said dryly. This time she did smile. It transformed her entire face, taking her from austere and intimidating to warm and almost mischievous. "You're funny. Most people just complain." "Oh, I'm definitely going to complain, but I'm also funny." "What were you doing hiking at midnight?" The question was direct, almost invasive from a stranger, but something about the way she asked it genuinely curious, not judgmental, made me answer honestly. I couldn't sleep, my brain wouldn't shut off. I kept thinking about everything I haven't done, everything I've messed up, all the ways I'm running out of time. I laughed, but it came out bitter. 45 and hiking alone in the dark because I can't figure out how to live in my own skin. It's pathetic. Elena leaned back, studying me with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. 45 isn't old, and hiking alone isn't pathetic, it's brave. Brave people don't end up in the ER with sprained ankles. Brave people take risks. Sometimes risks don't work out. That doesn't make them less brave. She stood up then, that fluid grace again, and I felt an absurd sense of loss. I have to check on other patients, but Sarah, you're not running out of time. You're just running towards something you haven't found yet. She walked away, and I sat there in that terrible waiting room, my ankle throbbing, my heart doing something strange and unfamiliar in my chest, wondering how a complete stranger had just reached inside me and touched something I'd thought was dead. I didn't expect to see her again. The universe isn't that kind, and I'd learned long ago not to mistake a moment of connection for fate. The ER doctor confirmed a bad sprain but no fracture, gave me crutches and prescription strength ibuprofen, and sent me home at 5 a.m. with instructions to stay off my foot for a week. I didn't stay off my foot for a week. 3 days later, I was hobbling into my favorite coffee shop, telling myself that working from the cafe instead of my home office counted as taking it easy. My ankle was still wrapped, still aching, but the walls of my apartment had started closing in. I needed people, even if I wasn't talking to them. I needed the ambient noise of life happening around me. The cafe was crowded for a Thursday morning. I was standing in line, balancing on my good foot and scrolling through emails I didn't want to answer, when someone bumped into me from behind. I stumbled, my crutch slipped. I was going down, and all I could think was that breaking my other ankle would be the perfect capstone to the week from hell. But I didn't fall. Strong hands caught me, steadied me, held me upright with a sureness that suggested dancer's reflexes. And when I turned around, there she was. Elena looked different in daylight. Her hair was down, falling in dark waves past her shoulders. She wore a soft gray sweater and black leggings, and there was a sheen of sweat on her forehead that suggested she'd just come from a workout. She was even more beautiful than I remembered, which seemed impossible. "Sarah," she said, and my name in her mouth sounded like something valuable. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm always fine." I was babbling. Why was I babbling? "What are you doing here?" "Getting coffee, same as you." She was still holding my arm, and I was acutely aware of her fingers through my sweater sleeve. "You're not supposed to be on that ankle yet. Doctor's orders are more like doctor's suggestions. That's not how medicine works." But she was smiling again, that transformation that made the whole cafe seem brighter. "Sit down before you hurt yourself. I'll get your coffee. What do you want?" "You don't have to—" "Sarah, sit. What do you want?" There was something about the way she said it. Not bossy, but certain, like she was used to people listening when she spoke, that made me obey. I found a small table by the window and collapsed into it, my ankle screaming its protest. She returned 10 minutes later with 2 lattes and a chocolate croissant. "You look like someone who needs a pastry." "I'm trying to eat healthy." "So am I, 6 days a week." She sat across from me, pulling her chair close. "Today is my cheat day. You can't dance professionally for 20 years and maintain that kind of discipline without occasionally telling the rules to go to hell." 20 years? You don't look old enough." "I'm 39. I started when I was 6. She tore the croissant in half, pushed the larger piece toward me. "I was a principal dancer with the National Ballet, past tense. I retired 2 years ago." "Retired at 37? That seems young." Something shifted in her expression, a shadow passing over her face. "Dancers don't get long careers. Our bodies are our instruments, and instruments wear out. I had a good run, Now I teach, I choreograph, I volunteer at hospitals to remind myself that there are worse things than a career ending. I bit into the croissant, letting the butter and chocolate dissolve on my tongue, watching her. She held her latte with both hands, like she needed the warmth, even though the cafe was almost too warm. There was a story there, something painful she wasn't saying. "What do you do?" she asked. "When you're not spraining your ankle in the middle of the night?" "I'm an architect, residential design mostly. I help people build their dream homes." I laughed, but it came out sad. It's ironic. I'm great at designing spaces for other people's happiness. My own life is a disaster. Recent breakup? 6 months ago. Relationship lasted 8 years. She wanted different things. I wanted different things. We stopped wanting the same things and pretended we didn't notice until we couldn't pretend anymore. Elena nodded slowly, understanding in her eyes. My marriage ended 3 years ago, 12 years together. He was a good man. I was a terrible wife, not because I didn't love him, but because I didn't love him the right way. The confession hung between us, and I knew, the way you sometimes just know things, what she was really saying. "How long have you known?" I asked softly. "That I was gay? Always, I think. But I'm Brazilian. Catholic family, traditional values. I thought I could make it work. I thought discipline and commitment were enough." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt stripped bare. "They're not enough, are they? You can't discipline yourself into the right feelings." "No," I whispered. "You can't." We sat there in that coffee shop for 3 hours, we tall. Elena's dance studio was in a converted warehouse in the Arts District, the kind of space that would have cost a fortune anywhere else, but was somehow affordable in the overlooked parts of the city. She'd invited me to watch her teach, and I'd said yes before my brain could list all the reasons why getting involved with someone new was a terrible idea. I arrived early, climbing the 3 flights of stairs slowly on my healing ankle, and found the studio door propped open. Music drifted out, something classical and dramatic that I didn't recognize but felt in my chest. The studio was beautiful, hardwood floors polished to a shine, floor-to-ceiling mirrors on 2 walls, bars along the third, and enormous windows on the fourth that let in waterfalls of afternoon light. And in the center of that light, Elena was dancing. She moved like water, like wind, like something not quite human. Her body bent and extended in ways that defied physics, every movement precise and powerful and devastatingly graceful. She wore a simple black leotard and pink tights, her hair in that tight bun again, and she was the most magnificent thing I'd ever seen. I stood in the doorway, frozen, afraid that any movement would break the spell. The music built to a crescendo, and Elena turned, a series of turns so fast and controlled that she seemed to be spinning in place, and then stopped on a single point, balanced on one toe, arms extended, head tilted back. She held the pose for a long moment, and then the music stopped. She saw me then. "How long have you been standing there?" she asked, breathing hard, her chest rising and falling. "Long enough to realize I have absolutely no grace whatsoever." She laughed, walking toward me, and even her walk was dancing. "You have your own kind of grace. Not everyone's grace has to look like ballet. Mine looks like tripping over things and spraining my ankle. That's honesty, not lack of grace. Come in. My class doesn't start for another 20 minutes." I stepped inside and she closed the door behind me. Suddenly the studio felt very small, despite being enormous. We were alone in this beautiful space, and I was acutely aware of how close she was standing, the scent of her, something clean and slightly floral, mixed with sweat. "I've been thinking about you," she said quietly. "Since the coffee shop, since the hospital, actually. I don't usually do this." "Do what?" "Feel this way, this fast, this certain." She reached up and touched my face, her fingertips gentle on my cheek. I'm usually very careful, very slow. I spent years being careful. But with you, I don't want to be careful. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure she could hear it. I'm terrible at relationships. I mess them up. I'm bad at communicating and worse at vulnerability and... Sarah, she smiled. Stop listing reasons I shouldn't want you. I'm 39 years old. I know what I want. What do you want? I want to kiss you. I've wanted to kiss you since you made that sarcastic comment in the ER. But I need to know, is this too fast? Are you ready? I thought about Rebecca, about 8 years of slow death by comfort and routine. I thought about all the ways I'd played it safe and ended up alone anyway. I thought about Elena in that hospital waiting room, telling me I wasn't running out of time, just running toward something I hadn't found yet. I'm ready, I said. She kissed me. It wasn't like any kiss I'd experienced. There was a certainty to it, a skill, the same precision she brought to dance. Her lips were soft but firm, her hands cupping my face like I was something precious. And when she deepened the kiss, I felt it in my entire body. My hands found her waist, felt the strength in her core, and she pressed closer, and the whole world contracted to this moment, this woman, this impossible, perfect thing happening against all odds. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Wow, I managed. Yeah. Elena rested her forehead against mine. Wow. The studio door burst open and 3 teenage girls tumbled in, laughing and talking loudly. Elena stepped back smoothly, professionally, but her eyes stayed on mine. We'll continue this later, she said, and it was a promise. I watched her teach for the next hour. She was patient but demanding with her students, correcting their form with gentle hands, demonstrating movements with that breathtaking grace, making them try things again and again until they got it right. She was a teacher who believed in her students more than they believed in themselves. Afterward, we went to dinner at a small Italian place she loved. We held hands across the table. We talked about our families, her traditional Brazilian parents who still didn't quite understand why her marriage ended, my liberal but somehow still disappointed Midwestern parents who thought I was going through phases. We talked about what we wanted from life, from love, from ourselves. I want honesty, Elena said. I spent... It's funny how you can know something is happening and still be surprised when it happens. Elena and I dated for 6 weeks before we slept together. 6 weeks of dinners and phone calls and stolen kisses. Of her teaching me about dance and me showing her architectural drawings. Of slowly revealing ourselves to each other in the way you do when you're no longer young and stupid enough to think passion alone is enough. We were in my apartment when it finally happened. I'd cooked dinner, poorly, but she ate it anyway, and we'd had wine, and we were on my couch watching a documentary about Brazilian dancers, and her hand was in my hair, and I was touching the soft skin of her wrist, and suddenly watching the documentary seemed like the least important thing in the world. Sarah, she said, and there was something in her voice that made me look up. I need to tell you something before this goes further. My stomach dropped. Here it was, the thing that would ruin everything. She was married, she had cancer, she was moving to Brazil. There was always something. Okay, I said, sitting up, pulling away slightly. Don't do that. Don't pull away before you know what I'm going to say. She took my hand, held it tight. I need you to understand something about me, about my body. I waited, my heart pounding. I danced professionally for 20 years. I was good, really good. I was a principal dancer, which means I was one of the best in the country. But that level of dance, it destroys your body. The training starts when you're a child. They teach you to push through pain, to ignore what your body is telling you, to keep going when everything screams at you to stop. She paused, and I squeezed her hand, encouraging her to continue. By the time I was 30, I had stress fractures in both feet. At 33, I needed surgery on my hip. At 35, my knees started going. The doctor said I could keep dancing for a few more years if I wanted, but I'd need a wheelchair by 50, so I retired. Elena, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because my body is different now. I have scars from the surgeries. I have days when everything aches. I can't do everything I used to do. And I need you to know that before we... She gestured between us. I looked at this woman, this strong, graceful, devastatingly beautiful woman, and felt a surge of tenderness so powerful it hurt. I don't care about scars, I said. I have my own. Different kinds, but we all have them. And if you think having days when your body hurts is going to make me want you less, you're wrong. I'm not who I was. I'm not that dancer anymore. Good, because I'm not dating that dancer. I'm dating you. The woman who volunteers at hospitals at 2 a.m., the woman who teaches teenage girls to believe in themselves, the woman who told me I was running towards something I hadn't found yet. I cupped her face in my hands. You're not your career, Elena. You're not your body. You're the person inside, and that person is remarkable. She kissed me then, and this time we didn't stop. What happened next was private, sacred, ours. But I will say this. Making love to Elena was like nothing I'd experienced. She brought the same focus, the same precision, the same total commitment to it that she brought to dance. She knew her body, knew my body, knew exactly how to touch and where and when. And when she moaned my name, when she arched against me, when she gave herself over completely, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. Afterward, we lay tangled together in my bed, the city lights filtering through the curtains, her head on my chest, my fingers tracing patterns on her back. I love you, she said quietly. I know it's too soon. I know we're supposed to wait longer. But I love you, and I don't want to wait to say it. My breath caught. I love you too. Are you just saying that because I said it first? No. I'm saying it because I've been feeling it for weeks, and I was too scared to admit it. I kissed the top of her head. I love you, Elena Vasquez, you brilliant, talented, terrifying woman. She laughed, the sound vibrating against my chest. Terrifying? In the best way. You make me want to be braver than I am. You're already brave. You just don't see it yet. We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't afraid of the morning. But morning came anyway, and with it, reality. I woke to find Elena sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, staring at her phone. Her shoulders were tense, her jaw tight. What's wrong? I asked, sitting up. My ex-husband, she said, her voice flat. He wants to meet. He says it's urgent. What does he want? I don't know. We've barely spoken since the divorce. She turned to look at me, and there was fear in her eyes. Sarah, there's something else I need to tell you. Something I should have told you before. The bow. 6 months later, we stood in the airport watching Isabella board a plane to New York. She was tall like her mother with the same dark eyes and the same unconscious grace. She'd been wary of me at first, testing me with teenager attitude and pointed questions, but slowly we'd built something. Not a mother-daughter relationship. I'd never try to replace her father, but something else, something real. Take care of her, Isabella said to me, hugging her mother goodbye. She pretends to be tough, but she's not. I know, I said. I will. Elena cried as the plane took off. I held her hand and we watched until we couldn't see it anymore. She's going to be amazing, I said. I know. I just miss her already. We drove home to the apartment we'd started sharing 3 months ago, the one with enough room for Isabella when she visited, the one that was slowly filling up with both our lives. Elena's dance trophies next to my architecture models, her disciplined routine, and my creative chaos finding a balance. Love at 45 looks different than love at 25. It's less about passion and more about partnership. It's choosing someone every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. It's building a life together with full knowledge of each other's damage and deciding that the beautiful parts are worth the broken ones. Elena was a dancer. I was 45. And this is how it began. In a hospital waiting room at 2 a.m., with a sprained ankle and a stranger who saw something in me I'd stopped seeing in myself. This is how it continues, with coffee and tears, with conversations and compromises, with showing up and staying present and choosing love even when it's terrifying. This is how it lasts. What about you? Have you ever met someone who changed everything when you least expected it? Have you loved and been loved at an age when you thought it was too late? Share your story in the comments below. We want to hear about the unexpected loves, the second chances, the moments that proved it's never too late to begin again.